Hello everyone, buenos tardes and guten abend, and today we're going to talk about several countries at once. There's something terrible going on there. Subscribe to the channel and let's go. First, let's see what's happening in Germany, and Germany is being affected very badly by the heat. We're being told here that as many as 14,000 people unfortunately died due to the heat in Germany from April 6th to August 9th. This is the highest figure in the past 10 years, and here we should also remember those so-called hunger stones. That is, markings from the Middle Ages on stones which showed what water level corresponded to what level of food supply or crop yield, so to speak. And the hunger stones speak for themselves. The lower the level, the smaller the harvest, the greater the hunger. So there is no third option here. So far, unfortunately, things aren't looking good, and the number of premature deaths in Germany is as high as 14,000. That's 17 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. Naturally, high temperatures affect people with health problems and generally poor health the most. And these are older people. 85 and older, there are also younger people, but some cases are not registered as heat-related. Because a heart attack can't always be linked to the heat, although in most cases that's exactly what it is. It's like with hypothermia, heart problems often occur too. And they're not really attributed to hypothermia. Well, that's how it is. And then what else do we have in Germany? Well, here they talk about the need to prepare for war. War, militarization, shifting the country to a war footing. Everyone is getting ready for war. In general, it all feels familiar. Right now, in several CIS countries, we hear similar calls. And now something like this is starting in Europe too. Will it escalate? I think it's just a matter of time. And they're telling us that hybrid attacks coming from abroad are harmful. They threaten Germany. That's why an entire research center for drone defense will be created, and of course they'll soak up a few dozen million euros. But how could it be any other way? A good person, a good goal, disabling drones and apparently preparing the civilian population for all these problems. Oh, and money. Money is needed. Money on the table. The new center will deal with protection against drones. And it says the following. Together with one of the centers, we are creating a new technological center. Basically just centers everywhere. Which will become a unique facility on a national scale. The arms race in unmanned technology requires the creation of our own research divisions, so that we don't fall behind in overall development. What's going on there? It's not really common to talk about the economy, education, and everything else right now. The economy sort of exists on its own outside of the government. The government is doing something over there. The economy is just floating around somewhere out there. Education, well, it's not just hanging anymore. It's already broken off and is falling down with ever-increasing speed. But the war won't fight itself. The budgets there are so huge that's why they urgently need to protect everyone and everything. Well, it's clear that's where everything is shifting. Besides, they say the threat to civil aviation is growing. Naturally, there will be new equipment and budgets here too. And an additional radar has been installed at Leipzig Airport. Well, at least this one doesn't require huge expenses. But most of all, it's what different people are saying about hybrid wars, about how now you need to tighten your belt. And suddenly here we are. In the end, the ruling party in Germany has reached the point that I'll show it on my Telegram channel. A very strange statement from one of the deputies of the Christian Democratic Union. You will never have a German butcher again, this deputy declares. He even separates himself from you. So apparently citizens are separate. It's like flies on one side, cutlets on the other. So deputies are separate from ordinary citizens. And now he's halal. You will never have movie theaters in the city again. That's how it is. New times accept it. And Portagenu Tsemer said the same thing when he talked about 20 years of prosperity, and now they are over. So the Germans apparently need to get used to life on the land. I won't stop joking about it. And not just the Germans, of course, because in many countries in Europe, and not only there, the situation is about the same. That is, people, here's the most interesting thing. A party comes in with some promises to raise the standard and quality of people's lives. And just a few months later, they start telling us that we need to tighten our belts, things will get worse, we have to endure this and that, endure here, endure there, and so on. Citizens say the representatives of all these parties, and then they're surprised that their support level is below the floor and no one plans to re-elect them. Strange, isn't it? It's actually kind of unusual, not something we're used to. Next is the USA. There's some crazy stuff going on there too, especially since someone came to power, you know who I mean, the so-called beloved dove of peace for many. And this craziness is connected to the record national debt. Actually, it's a record every day because it keeps growing every day. Even if it increased by just 1 cent, it would still be a record. But unfortunately, it's not increasing by just 1 cent. They tell us that rates have risen, just like before the last financial crisis in 2008. The Trump administration has taken emergency measures. And the total amount of American national debt has already surpassed $40 trillion. Not billions, but trillions. The yield on 30-year US Treasury bonds has reached 5%, which was unheard of. The last time this happened was back in 2007. And back then, such a high yield turned out to be a harbinger of the most significant financial crisis of modern times. Analysts believe that there are two main reasons for the spread of American securities. One of them is the increase in their yield. First, this yield is growing because the demand for borrowed funds in the economy exceeds their supply. That's the first reason. Second, there is an increase in the risk premium. Investors doubt the country's ability to service its debts. They fear that the authorities will either declare a default or allow inflation to rise in order to reduce the real debt burden. And naturally, the higher the risk, the higher the interest rates. Remember all those funds from before, and even now there are all sorts of them, both crypto and regular ones. The more clueless it is and the stranger things it promises, the higher the interest rate. I remember they once promised 1,000% published in some newspapers, 1,000%, 200%, 500%. Well, in the end, of course, it all collapsed as soon as a certain number of investors brought in their money. Here, basically, it's about the same thing, just on a much larger scale because, well, this is an entire country. US budget expenditures now exceed revenues by $2 trillion a year. That's 6% of GDP. And that's even though there's no pandemic or crisis right now, at least in the US. The economy is growing and doesn't need such large-scale fiscal stimulus. Deficit is fueled by expectations of high inflation and rising interest rates, and as a result, the debt will not be serviced as well as before. And real estate prices will rise, and so will everything else. So citizens will probably just be extremely happy already. Not in Germany, but in the US, people are extremely happy that a real leader has come to power. Make America great again, he said. But will it be possible to make America great? And what kind of America will it be? There's also that big canyon. It's there, but it didn't grow upwards. It went down. Well, I think that's pretty much what's happening now. And this isn't meant as any negativity towards the US. It's like this everywhere now. Whoever comes to power, it feels like in a month they're a completely different person, and in a year even more so. And what if you wait 6 years? Like with one powerful leader, it really felt like there was a person before and a person after. It's like a reptilian and an earthling, so to speak. In general, something strange is happening. Another reason is that America is experiencing an artificial intelligence boom, which is similar to the dot-com boom, which, if you remember, eventually burst. Right now, huge amounts of money are being invested in building data centers and in the race for leadership in the field of artificial intelligence. Of course, this money is borrowed from the market because almost no one has such huge amounts of money. But in the end, if any problems arise, all of this collapses. It's like a house of cards. You pull one card out of the foundation and everything collapses completely. Or it's like the domino effect. One little domino determines the behavior of the entire huge system, which in some cases consists of tens of thousands of these very dominoes. Bones, I think they're called bones. Yes. And in the end, all of it falls because of that one single domino which was affected by Earth's gravity. But now we're being told, on the other hand, that the US debt crisis doesn't seem to be a threat. Analysts are confident about that. Back then, the problems were with subprime mortgage debt. And now it's not unemployed Americans, but wealthy, credit-worthy American corporations that are competing with the Treasury for investors' money in the debt market. They have much more ability to cover losses if the artificial intelligence boom turns out to be a bubble. Whether that's true or not, we'll see in the next few days. But it could be months, maybe, or maybe even years. But there's an even more interesting problem. That's the oil and gas crisis. The dove of peace, Trump, has made it so that now it's impossible to negotiate with Iran, because it's unclear with whom, and it's unclear who should be negotiating. And the Strait of Hormuz, through which the lion's share of imports, or rather exports, whichever you prefer, of these oil and gas products passes, is blocked. It's blocked. But Trump, what did he do? How did he solve the problem? He simply declared the Strait of Hormuz to be American. It's now new American territory. This immediately reminds us, of course, of how certain regions of Ukraine were added to the Russian constitution and declared their own. Well, it's about the same in terms of quality and compliance. In general, it's this kind of legislative paradox. And in addition, the US also created a route for oil exports through the Strait of Hormuz. Here's more. Positive news. It's reported that the Americans have been controlling the southern channel of the Strait of Hormuz for 2 months now. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps can cause inconvenience, but they do not control the strait. We do, say the Americans. As part of the operation, every night 15 to 20 tankers enter and exit the strait through the southern channel along the coast of Oman. Then Trump implemented another one of his decisions. He banned the issuance of visas to citizens from 75 countries that he called unfriendly to the US. But the US court overturned this, saying it did not comply with either the Constitution, the spirit, or the letter of the law. It's all extremely strange. Among the countries whose citizens were temporarily barred from receiving immigrant visas to the US from January 21 were Russia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, and Uzbekistan. The State Department classified these countries as high risk. Now, the court has ruled that this policy violates the law and was adopted in excess of the legal authority of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Because of this, the policy is being revoked in accordance with the Administrative Procedure Act. But what's interesting here is why the court waited so long if the problem was so obvious. But in general, what's done is done. In my opinion, it's a good thing because 75 countries definitely can't all be so hostile and unreliable. It was the Trump's lackeys want to portray. But anything is possible. Write in the comments what you personally think. It would be interesting to hear the opinions of US citizens or even non-citizens, just people from other countries who are in America. What is happening there now and whether the court was right to overturn it, or do you also support this decision? In general, it's extremely interesting. Now about Poland. Protests by farmers have started in Warsaw and other cities. They are coming from everywhere because, as it turned out, the European Union made an agreement with the countries of Latin America or South America. Cheap food products are being supplied from there, and this is unprofitable for the farmers. In general, we can now say that the boomerang of their attitude toward Ukraine has hit Poland. Because earlier, farmers from Poland were blocking trucks carrying grain and food products from Ukraine, since those imports were once again threatening prices in Poland. Now the same thing is happening with South America, but you can't block it there, because it's an official agreement and the volume of supplies is simply huge. What's going on here? Polish farmers took to the streets of cities across the country on Friday to protest against the EU agreement with South American countries. Here's what one of the farmers says. "We came here to express our protest against the leadership of the European Union. In the last 20 to 30 years, we have started producing healthier food that meets established standards. And today, that same union is violating all these standards and is starting to bring in goods from countries outside the bloc, from various countries in South America." But of course, Polish farmers can also be understood, because on the one hand, they have been bringing all their products in line with the standards for many years and have spent a huge amount of money since the standards there are quite complex. And now they're being told, listen, we have partners here, we take whatever we want from them, maybe check it a little, and you just sit here with your products. Naturally, that's also an issue. And as a result, the government and the farmers are hardly on the same side. The protesters believe that the government has not done enough to protect the country's agriculture. In Poland, the government opposed adopting this agreement several times, but somehow it didn't work out. They weren't lucky, and the European Union signed it. And what the European Union has done must of course be followed by the member countries of the European Union, of which there are now 27. There used to be idle talk that Kayukalo would be removed from her position because calling her a diplomat is quite a stretch. But nothing has changed. No one has been fired yet. No one has been banned. So everything is happening just as it was. But Poland, on the other hand, is planning to militarize again. We were just talking about Germany and these hybrid drone wars. And Poland is doing the same thing. It's militarizing and modernizing. As a result, I live in Spain, and there are just countless Poles here. They are leaving, moving out of Poland because they don't want to live in a militarizing country. Although, again, at the same time, Poles are saying that Ukrainians need to be, out of Poland and so on. Because it's unclear why benefits aren't being paid there. Ukrainians are working, but if a wealthy Ukrainian comes and doesn't want to work, well, he probably pays money to live. He doesn't just magically create it somewhere in his bathroom at night. So it's kind of strange. This is not the same. It's something else you don't understand. Poland is closing border crossings with Russia and deploying missiles on the border with a range of up to 1,000 kilometers. If necessary, it can completely block everything. This was stated by the Polish Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, at a press conference in Giżycko. At the same time, according to the minister, Warsaw is planning to deploy missile weapons on its eastern borders as part of the Eastern Shield program. Targets can be hit at a distance of up to 1,000 kilometers. He says that this is strategic deterrence at a distance of over 1,000 kilometers and operational deterrence up to 1,000 kilometers. As we know, strategic deterrence usually means nuclear warheads. Perhaps in this case, they mean some kind of ballistic missiles without nuclear warheads. But even if you remove the nuclear warhead from a ballistic missile and put on a different one without a nuclear charge, that doesn't mean you can't reverse this modernization. You can always put everything back the way it was. And Kosiniak-Kamysz emphasized that the Eastern Shield has already gone beyond the national framework. Military personnel from Germany, the US, the UK, and France are participating in its implementation. This is an entire philosophy of deterrence and defense that the whole alliance adopts as its own, according to Kosiniak-Kamysz. But apparently, this is all wonderful, and the most interesting thing is what Tusk said. He suggested not to prosecute the people who blew up the Nord Stream pipelines. That is, the Nord Stream pipelines, having been blown up, naturally cannot transport cheap energy resources from Russia to Germany, which is in great need of them. Without them, well, the industry there is collapsing. I won't repeat myself. There are plenty of videos on this topic. Well, and Tusk is like, listen, what's up with Germany? They're supposed to be our partners, but to hell with them, not in blue flames since there's no gas, but in some other way anyway. Let's not prosecute them. Good job, they blew it up and that's fine. Although Poland itself doesn't really have much gas either. And where are they going to get it from and how are they going to get energy? Well, there are a lot of questions, but apparently they're all rhetorical. But in Germany, they're saying that Kyiv is responsible for the explosions on the Nord Stream pipelines. 3 out of 4 lines of the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 pipelines were blown up at the end of 2022. And as it turned out, the explosion was organized by order of Ukrainian government authorities. And here, several people have already been caught and extradited, although Poland and some other countries were against the extradition. Well, including, of course, Ukraine. They said, it wasn't us, we found Putin's business card there, and so on and so forth.
That's the news, dear viewers. Write what you think about this. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye, everyone.
Let's suppose there's a position that 2 people want to take. Moreover, this position requires knowledge, some experience, and so on and so on. And everything else is the same for both of them. Everything else is the same for both of them. Well, one is a decent person. The other is a real scoundrel. The question is, who will get this position? The answer, of course, is the scoundrel, because he will do things that the decent person won't. And of course, he will make it through. And the sad conclusion is that as the level rises, scoundrels accumulate.